All right, we're back here on Preds Power Hour on the Chase Thomas podcast after a week away. Don't fret. Fret not, if you will, because the Preds Power Hour is back. Bryan Bastin of On the Forecheck is here. Bryan, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. Sometimes some things came up in my life and I wasn't able to make it last week, and the boys were gracious enough, didn't fire me on the spot. But sometimes it comes out of nowhere and life hits you like your Draymond Green, or
Ooh.
just knocks you out. But we're back. We're good to go. We got hockey here in less than 2 hours for us, so I'm excited.
There you go. I like the Draymond Green pun. Charlie Burris, also here of A to Z Sports, repping the company merch on this edition of the pod.
It's true. I am a company man. We did consider firing Bryan, but then we consulted and we were like, well, he's actually the only person that actually knows stuff on the show, so that's probably not going to go so hot. So here we are.
He's the leader of the program.
Yeah, he was
like,
really is. That is not a lie.
You have put a lot of trust in me, Chase. You've got whole setup going. You've got this thing. You've got this established, successful thing, and you're like, hey, Bryan, you run this thing. Like, okay, sure.
Well, no, you're good. And it's also, the best part is that I learn something every week. And I think Charlie feels the same, where each week we're learning more. And I think it's more, and if we're learning more, I think the listeners are learning more. And I think that's the way to do it. And I've always kind of pushed back against folks who act as though they're experts on something that they are very much not experts on. And I would very much rather be open about where I'm a novice and where I don't know as much. And
I thought you're talking about me more. Again. There.
Oh,
okay.
no. Not
and on that note, you are fired. We're doing
because that's the only way you learn, folks. I promise. It's okay to admit that you don't know everything, and there are things you don't know, because you can learn things when you admit that you don't know them. It's a great thing. It's a great system in life.
That's right.
But we are here nonetheless to talk all things Nashville Predators and maybe a little NHL too. But Bryan, where are we starting in today's show?
Well, like I said, when to you, the listener and viewers that you're watching at home, this game will have already happened today. So let us know how it went. Yeah, it's great. No, I like that part too. But for us, we still have to operate in the past. So we're going to talk about the game that's coming on, the Global Series in Prague. But first, we're going to do some recap of training camp. Obviously, they've got most of their guys sent down to Milwaukee or back to their junior teams. They're carrying a roster right now of 27. They're allowed 4 extra for this trip. But then on Sunday at noon, they've got to make some more cuts. But we'll talk about that. So I wanted to go over some of the things we saw at training camp and in the preseason.
All right. Where do you want to start?
Well, I wanted to talk about the 3 groups of players that I wanted to kind of look at. We've got the new guys, like the new acquisitions, your Ryan McDonough's, guys like that came over in trades, are returning veterans, obviously the guys we're used to seeing, and then the rookies, the younger guys. And I wanted to, kind of go over like who impressed and who kind of disappointed in each one of those groups. So I'm going to start out with the new acquisitions, and there wasn't a whole bunch, necessarily. I think only a handful of free agents. Obviously, there was Ryan McDonough, the big piece, and Niederreiter. I wouldn't say from preseason, I was very impressed in both of them. Actually, I think more so with McDonough. I think we knew what Niederreiter was going to be, but McDonough is a guy that, his $6 million contract will be worth it, because now, instead of having a third pair of guys who are just, not very good and you only trust to play about 7 or 8 minutes a game, now they can put, Dante Fabro or somebody like that, Alex Carrier, somebody who's got like legitimate skill on that third pair and not be a complete liability. So I think, McDonough was a pleasant surprise, but this is, everybody I know who covers the Lightning, they were like, this is exactly what we told you about this guy. Like, you're going to love him. So that was good. As far as other guys who were disappointments, there were only a handful of guys in this group. I think John Leonard, who came over from San Jose, he kind of wasn't, again, he was in part of that Luke Cunnin trade. It was just nice that we got that. But yeah, I mean, he never really stood out, not in training camp, not really in preseason. He had a couple points in preseason play. But other than that, nothing that was really kind of rock me, but I think he'll be a fine AHL player. I wish I had a better answer than that for this group, but there wasn't too many of them. So, from those, if you guys got to catch any of like the preseason, anything like that, especially guys like Niederreiter, McDonough, did either of those two kind of stand out that you saw?
What about you, Charlie?
I mean, the only thing that I have been able to watch was that game against SC Bern. And yeah, I mean, they're pretty much as advertised. I would ask, the Predators almost lost that game. Why are we going to suck this season, Brian? Why? How did we let this happen?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they only gave up, I think they outscored people in the preseason, including SC Bern, like 22-8.
Yeah, won that Lightning game like 7-1.
Yeah. I think part of it is, of course they're going to suck just because they almost lost to the European team, so it's just tank.
Season's
it's time
over.
to get that. Yeah. Otherwise, I think they had a hard time adjusting to the international ice, which, if you know me,
this just happened in the NBA.
Right?
The Phoenix Suns lost to the NBL team,
and I said on Twitter that night when that happened, it was the day before the SC Bern game, and I said, Predators fans, if I see a single one of you laughing about this tonight, like, we know who to come after. Like, don't you dare close your mouth, don't look at it, just say nothing. But but that international ice, that's my thing. I love it. It's much more wide open. It allows that space for, how you see teams play like an overtime 3-on-3. They've got all this space to move and create offense. It's awesome to watch. And internationally, they have that. It's much, much wider. It's kind of weird to watch, but it's really great because you get to see some of your forwards like really make some plays. And I think they just had a little bit of hard time adjusting to it. They'd have all probably played on it multiple times in their careers, whether that was juniors or Olympics, world championships, but probably not as a group like that. So it took them a little while, but of course, Roman Josi in his hometown, they talked about him riding his bike to practice to sell candy bars so he could get tickets to go see SC Bern. It's like, of course he did.
Every part of that whole thing with Yossi, where they were like, his grandparents got to watch him play live for the first time ever, and all this, so it was just like, oh, this is so cute. That's so nice. And then he scores 2 goals. I mean, you couldn't have written it better. It was nice.
Yeah. But it was great to see that. Again, Niederreiter and McDonough were both good as advertised. Like you said, it kind of looked like a regular, the units operated like it was a regular season game. They were pretty efficient. So, that was good. Talking about some of the returning players. So these are guys that were, spent a good amount of time on the roster last year. There were a couple guys that really impressed me, throughout practice. We saw a lot more of some of the veterans that second, part of training camp and into the preseason. They got a good amount of time. There wasn't anybody who didn't play any preseason games. But just absolutely blown away by the effort of Tanner Jeannot. And I know we talk about him quite a bit. They got him working on the power play in practice, which would be really great to see. I mean, he scored twice in the preseason on that power play unit with the first unit, which was an excellent watch. But you can tell that he is just a really tenacious guy. I mean, continually, but he's really taking advantage. He's got a lot more confidence, I think. He's not this new guy that's coming in. So he's playing harder. He's playing a little bit more disciplined, but it's preseason, so it's hard to tell that. But it seemed like he had a little bit less bull in a china shop and just maybe a slightly smaller bull in a bigger china shop. So he's getting there. But I was really kind of blown away. The regular guys, your Forsbergs, your Duchesnes, looked fantastic as always. Didn't look like they hadn't missed a step. But I think Jeannot really was the one who leapt out and surprised me. I'm going to save one of these though for my disappointments. I'm going to save that for a couple segments down because I've got a lot more to say about this. But another guy who was really just kind of disappeared to me was Colton Sissons. And again, this is like your career, forever third line center. He's fine. He's a good two-way defensive guy. He's not going to make a lot of defensive mistakes, but he just seemed a lot slower. A little bit, his decision making didn't seem as good. And that's something you don't expect out of a guy like him. He's usually a very safe, very smart player. He's the reason why they gave him that, was it 7-year, $1.5 million a year deal? Just a very weird deal to give out for someone to take that much term for that little money, but he'll be here. I mean, when you fall asleep, Colton Sissons will be there. When you wake up, he'll still be there. So, but we'll see. Hopefully he gets, this gets sorted out, but there's a lot of competition coming from that bottom six, especially with all the young guys. And so it'll be interesting to watch to see, what he does. And then with the rookies, again, I have to really beat the drum about Juuso Parssinen. I've been talking about him for a while, but another guy I want to talk about is Kiefer Sherwood. This is a guy who was brought over, 27 years old. He's played a handful of NHL games in his career. He played, I think a dozen or so. He's been an AHL guy. And as of right now, he's going to be starting on the second line with Ryan Johansson and Nino Niederreiter. He did that in the last 2 preseason games as well. John Hines just said this morning that spot's still open for competition, but he's been there. And he's been, great. He kind of reminds me of Daniel Carr a few years ago. Daniel Carr was a guy, I think he was 28. He was the reigning AHL player of the year. It scored something, obscene amount of points. And seemed really good in practices, but just never really connected it. He was just a very good AHL guy. That's kind of what his ceiling was. I'm hoping that's not the case for Sherwood, but I don't think he's going to spend all season centering the second line with Ryan Johansson and Niederreiter. But he's been, he stood out to me every game. Mentioned a couple things about him during training camp as well. He really stood out. Disappointments. It's hard to, I think I would say disappointment in just the case of Juuso Parssinen, and just the case that they sent him down to Milwaukee, which ultimately is what he needs. He's been playing overseas. He needs a year kind of on North America to adjust to the level. AHL is a higher, caliber league than what he's used to. But man, I really wanted him in Nashville to start the year. It's just a personal thing, because he's, I'd asked several players after the preseason games, and I asked them, who are the young guys that they've been watching really stood out, and every single one of them said Parssinen. And they're like, this kid is ridiculous. There's no, why was he a 7th round pick? Like, he's ready to be in the NHL now. So
why is that though?
So he honestly, and I think I've told the story about when they went to draft him, the draft registry didn't have his name in their database. And so they had to go and get information before they could announce the pick. He was he's a little bit, it's hard. He kind of exploded onto the scene, the 6 months before the draft, but was playing a little bit. He was playing the second league overseas, and just, the hard part was those years, that was around the COVID time. And so international scouting, like going out in person, was not happening. And so you had to be there or just be all watching film. And luckily for Nashville, they've got tremendous guys, especially with Sweden, Finland, obviously, as you see, the amount of those players that are on the Preds roster. And they picked up on him. I can't remember who it was. Kekalainen, I believe, or the Finnish scout was the one who found him. And I'm glad he did, because there are a lot of teams kicking themselves that, they're like, we could have spent a second or a third on him. So, again, it's hard to say disappointment. The rest of the guys were not too bad, just kind of what you expect for, whatever age, part in their development they're in. There was nobody who really just stunk. But, there also were a bunch of kids, they're all 19, 18-year-olds and playing.
Well, why do you think the NHL players and the guys you were talking to before the games and in the scrums think he's ready and want him to stay?
One of the things they mentioned was his vision, as they kind of catch-all term, but just his ability to be aware of where he is on the ice and how to either create space or shut down space in the case of playing defense, and to be able to know where his teammates are or where the guy carrying the puck is going to be at all times. He's got a pretty good shot. I think better than I was expecting. He's got a good amount of accuracy on his wrister, and it's kind of fun to watch in person. But he's just a strong looking skater as well. During rookie camp, I had said that Luke Evangelista was kind of like the only guy that I saw there, who looked like he kind of was like an NHL skater. The rest of them were younger guys. Parssinen, by training camp and in the preseason, he looked like he belonged. And so, it's just he's tenacious. He scored points. Everybody had something to say about him pretty much after every training camp practice. So, it's a thing, but for his development, the roster's crowded, it's for the best. But for me, and I think a lot of people, we were all hoping to see him maybe sneak on the roster.
Well, if he does eventually get on, who do you think is the odd man out? Who do you think he replaces? We should be looking over their shoulder right now.
You can look at a guy like, Kiefer Sherwood, or Colton Sissons. They probably would never do that though. Who's ever sitting at on that fourth line? Ellie Tolman was benched towards the end of last season. Philip Tomasino is currently not starting today's game. He could be another guy, and we'll talk more about him soon. But he could come in and do it. I mean, again, like they've got that bottom line, and it looks like Cody Glass and Tolvanen and maybe Tomasino or somebody like that, which I think would be a good spot for a guy like Parsonen, this season. But I don't expect him to be in the bottom line too long when he does get to the NHL. He seems like a guy who probably top out as a second line, a good, I would say maybe 60, 65 point score within a couple years of, full time in the NHL. I could see him putting up 20 plus goals, we'll see how long that lasts, but I think his development has been crazy. He's skyrocketed. And so, he's got a good ceiling. He's got something for a 7th round pick. You couldn't ask for better, honestly. So
yeah, the first name that came to mind for me for like replacement there was Ellie Tolvanen. I don't know if that makes the most sense, but I think he's been sort of underwhelming in his time in Nashville overall. But then I remember specifically there was so much frenzy around him coming in. It's not like that yet with Parsonen, although if they don't pick him up, it might be. But I just remember them being like, why is he not playing? Why is he not playing? Why is he not playing? Everybody was freaking out. And then he came, and ultimately I don't know that he actually was ready. He still is not totally settled in, I don't think. But he was the first person that came to mind. I would be hard pressed to see them replace Sissons, even though maybe they should. But regardless.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I mean, that kind of does roll in to what we're going to go over here next with that. We obviously a bunch of these guys that the roster's down to 27. I can do a quick kind of read through of the guys that are down who got sent down. So obviously, your big guys, Askarov in Milwaukee. He looks to be the guy right now that's currently in Milwaukee as far as goaltenders go. So it's going to be real excited there. I know that he's been hamming it up for the Milwaukee cameras up there in practice. Like the photographer says they have to tell him to stop looking at the camera and smiling. But he's an awesome guy. When talked to him, he was hilarious. And even in camp and preseason, Yusuf Parsonen, Luke Prokop went down to juniors. Luke Evangeliste, Igor Afanasiev, my boy. Zachary Leheroux, he was the 2nd round pick 2 years ago, I believe. We just found out last night actually, he may be out for 6 to 8 weeks with an injury. Not quite sure what that is, but he's an extremely physical player, known for getting in a lot of fights. And so he's just really good to back it up. So you kind of let him do it. And so I'm not sure still what that injury is, but that's kind of a big blow for him and his development with 6 to 8 weeks. Obviously, guys like Carmel, he went back overseas to go play in juniors a little bit before training camp. Devin Cooley, the other goaltender that's going to be down there alongside Tomas Pomaka. So those are the 3 in Milwaukee. The guys you expect. No huge surprises of those things. But the interesting part is, so we talked about Philip Tomasino. He did not play in the last preseason game. He did travel, and he is not playing today. I wouldn't be surprised to see him slotted in tomorrow for the second game on the back-to-back in Prague, just for the fact that they may want to just be like, all right, here's one game against the same opponent, put you in the same spot, see who can kind of do it. He was a little underwhelming in the preseason. He was kind of the biggest disappointment, I think, of all the players out of all the groups. Especially the game against on Thursday night. I think I counted 4 plays where it was either like an odd man rush, or it was him and another guy against 2-on-1. And either he was the guy making the pass to a wide open guy and completely miss him, cross ice across the face of the goalie, the perfect pass you want, or someone would make a great pass to him and he'd just completely miss it. I'm not sure what it is. He's a guy that you don't see them making mental mistakes like that very often, but something just feels a little bit off, probably just confidence. It kind of snowballed throughout camp with all these new guys coming in. So it's going to be interesting, but even more interesting is that Tomasino is out of these 27 guys, they've got until Sunday to make 4 more cuts to get down to 23 for the season. And Tomasino is the only guy left on the roster who is waiver exempt. So, for those of you who don't know, again, like, so when players come in, especially when they're on their ELC, when they first get signed, they've got a certain amount of years of this waiver exemption rule. So basically they get, once they accrue a season, which I believe is 9 NHL games, and that counts as them accruing a season. Otherwise they can play up to 9 and then not count against them. So luckily for Tomasino, he showed up a little bit early. He's gotten some time in, but he's still waiver exempt, so he can be sent down without worried about being claimed. But that still leaves the rest of the roster, which, if you look, there's not a ton of space. So again, there's 4 of these guys, as we talked about before. There's Connor Ingram, there is Kevin Lankinen and UC Saros all on the trip. It's going to be very difficult for them to spend all season, or at least to start the year, to spend 3 spots on 3 goaltenders. So that part's going to be very, very interesting. I can tell you right now, I know from what I'm hearing from a couple of people who write about teams, they're very interested in seeing what's happening to Ingram, because not only is this a guy where you're like, oh, we could get him and he could be a 10, 15 game backup. And they're thinking this guy could play 30 games because our goaltending is bad. He can play 40 games right now. They got everybody, the world got to look at him against Colorado, when they nearly pulled off the upset because of him. So that's going to be a very difficult one. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to showcase him maybe in the game tomorrow, and try to work out a deal to trade him, which I talked about how I feel about this and why they're like, Lincoln is the guy they need. I don't know. I don't get it. But I think Ingram is a really good, high quality backup goaltender. Kevin Lankinen has looked good all preseason, surprisingly good all preseason, but he's not that. And so it's going to be interesting, but that's just one of 4 spots. Tomasino could be that guy, and that saves them where he can go down. They don't have to worry about anybody claiming him. But then you still have, they've got 8 defenders right now. Guys that, probably going to make a Sherwood. I didn't think was going to, shows what I know. But, there's a lot of guys that are kind of fighting for, is Tolvanen going to be in there? Is it going to be, some of these other guys who are sitting there and just kind of tweeners who are getting some time in, like Cody Glass? There was if anybody has seen the first episode of the Behind the Glass on the NHL Network, showing the training camp for the Predators, doing behind the scenes, a great scene with them calling Cody Glass into the office with David Poyle and John Himes, let him know that he had made the team and was going on the trip.
I did see this.
Yeah. And I mean, that's that, his reaction there was exactly how he was when we talked to him a couple times during camp. Like, he's like, this is my last chance. He's like, the Predators gave me a second chance. They gave me a year to recover from my injury and get my game back and focus in Milwaukee. And he's like, I'm just happy to be here. That's all I care about. He's like, I have to give him everything on this one. We're just like, wow. I mean, and it showed on TV, and I'm glad that people got to see that. He's a guy, I think, that I don't see him being cut or waived. But it's hard because there's a lot of guys on there that you want to keep on the team. But you run the risk of losing them. And so I'm very, very curious to see where they go with that. I think Tomasino and Ingram, those are the 2 biggest ones to watch. Tomasino, you can send him down, but people are a little disappointed. Obviously they want to see him. He played a bunch of games last year. And then Ingram, is the Predators prepared to try to waive him and maybe lose him for absolutely nothing in return? So it's going to be very, very interesting to watch.
So what do you think ultimately happens? What are your predictions? Who ultimately, what are the 4 moves that they make before Sunday? If you had to put on your expert clairvoyant Bryan hat, what do you think ultimately happens?
So I think they're going to send Tomasino down to start the season, and I don't hate it. I mean, I don't think it's going to be a bad move. I think that it'll be fine. Let him get some confidence back in the AHL. He tore up the AHL a couple years back. He can come back at any point in time, so I'm not too worried about it. I think Jordan Gross is a guy who's kind of signed as AHL, but he's still on the team. Him and Zach Sanford, I think, are two more. So if you count those two, I think Jankowski, the veteran guy, I thought he was going to be an AHLer, but I think he's going to stay on the roster just from numbers. And then I think the fourth one is going to, I don't know how they're going to get out of this Ingram situation. I'm hoping to be surprised, but even a trade is still a loss, even if it's getting something back, I think, on this. And so I think they're going to roll the dice and see what happens with Ingram. I don't see them trying to waive Kevin Lankinen, but I mean, they could, and give him his $2 million or whatever. And I don't think anybody's going to claim him. I mean, let's be honest, but I don't think they're going to do that to an older guy who they signed just as a free agent. So yeah, so I'm going to say Gross, Sanford, Tomasino, and Ingram, unfortunately.
Interesting. What do you make of that, Charlie?
I mean, I'm not as well versed in those moves. I pretty much defer to Bryan on that stuff because to be completely honest, too busy doing all this Tennessee stuff over here. So it's honestly very informative to hear what you have to say because that goalie situation is interesting. I've definitely wondered where they're going to go there. It's also been interesting. This is a little bit beside the point, but the hype coming into this game with UC Saros, I feel like people are like expecting him to be like a Vezina winner this year, which would be amazing. That's an alarm on my phone. But do you think he'll deliver this year? Just thinking about the goalie situation, it starts in what, an hour, or is it 2 p.m. Central Time? Is it 2 hours from now?
It's 1 Central. So
1 Central. Okay, 2 Eastern.
Yeah. I will buy you guys both a case of beer if he doesn't finish as a finalist for the Vezina again. And I think Sherseskin Igor in New York has been fantastic. I think he is a guy that's going to continue to get better, kind of like UC Saros is. I think Vasilevsky's, he's getting a little bit older, but I mean, I don't know what the odds are, and I don't usually make bets, but I feel like UC Saros, I mean, at least to be a finalist is easy money, but I mean, I wouldn't doubt him finishing and getting the Vezina this year. I mean, he was incredible last season. I think he started more games than any other player. He has gotten it, like his biggest for me in those years when he was splitting time with Pecorine was his biggest issue was his rebound control. And that was something that Pecorine was always very, very, very good at. And so it kind of, when you look at the comparison, obviously one is very big and one is very small, but the other thing is, again, that rebound control, and he is completely cleaned up. He went from being, I think when I was looking at the, some numbers, I think he was like 36th a couple years back in rebound control, and then now he's like 4th. I mean, wow. He's been a guy who has made up for his size by his technique, and he just keeps doing it. He just keeps like, oh, this thing is not like this is a weakness in my game. All right, fine. Like I'll work on it for 2 months in the season. It'll be ironed out. Don't worry. And there you go. So him staying healthy is, an injury is the only thing I think keeping him from finishing that high. But the hype is real. I mean, it's use. He's incredible. You saw how this team went. They made a push to the playoffs on his back and then lost him for the playoffs, and you saw what happened. So
he is my single hope to have a genuinely like good season. I would say I'm expecting middle of the road, and he's what I would hang my hat on, is if he can just have a miracle year. But
the Cup year, they were the last team to make it in the playoffs. I feel better about this team than I did about that one. And, all it takes is a good goaltender getting hot in the playoffs, and you can ride that almost all the way, as we saw. So it's, we'll see. I think he's the biggest factor in that. But yeah, the hype's real. The hype is 100% real.
Please, from your mouth to God's ears.
That's right.
Let it happen.
Yeah, and it's good. I mean, Pecorine's joined the staff. He's there. I got to talk with him in the media room during one of the intermissions, talking about our kids and playing hockey, which was surreal to do that. He's to realize he's talking about his actual, his kid and like when he gets older, what he's going to do, not UC. So who he is constantly referred to as his son. So yeah, it's cool. That was a little bit of a flex. You guys get to, hang out with Jonathan Crompton and some Vols guys and stuff.
That's
I'm
pretty
like,
dope.
I got to talk. Yeah, but I mean, it's good. And I think that's only because he's a goaltending advisor too. So I mean, it's going to help UC. It's going to help him. And we know after last year, he didn't need it, but it's only going to improve it. So I'm excited.
I like it. Well, we'll wrap up with this. There's more actual on the ice hockey coming up today. You mentioned at the top of the show, Bryan, that this is an opportunity for us to prove our clairvoyant skills. San Jose, Nashville today, but y'all are hearing this after the game. How does it go, Bryan, and what are you looking for with the games from now before and up until our next recording? What are you most interested in following?
So they don't play again after this weekend until next Thursday. So we'll be able to talk about that. But I think, San Jose, this is one of those games where it's like this, Nashville should win this, but just circumstances, and it's the NHL that I feel like they could drop. I'm not concerned about that as much. I think if they do lose, it's going to be because of just bad mistakes, or UC Saros just has an off day just because I just talked about him. But I mean, the San Jose Sharks, they kind of have done a big rebuild. They are going to finish bottom 3, I think, in the NHL, just because Arizona and Chicago, nobody could be worse than those two are right now. They've got guys like Timo Meier, who's fantastic. He had a great year last year. After that, there's not much. Tomas Hertl, obviously, it's a big game for him because he is from the Czech Republic. He's had a pretty good year. He's on the first line, I think, with Timo Meier, and then rounding out, this is indication of the talent level in San Jose. Rounding out the first line with Timo Meier and Tomas Hertl is Luke Kunin. So that kind of they said they've been pleasantly surprised by him, but a couple of the writers that I follow at San Jose, they're like, it's easy to be pleasantly surprised with kind of what's on the ice right now in San Jose. So, we'll see some guys, Nick Bonino, former Predator. You'll see him there. Erik Karlsson I liked that deal when it happened, but I was wrong. Very wrong. Mark-Edward Vlasic is a guy I always liked as a pure defensive defenseman, but that was 3-4 years ago. And he's kind of, again, to steal a quote from JD over with the Locked On Sharks podcast, he's just a worn out husk of what he used to be, which his words, not mine. But and then of course another familiar face in Matt Benning, who is Borowiecki's partner. He'll be on the third pairing, which I think is fine for him. And then James Reimer he's fine. He'll probably go, a couple games above 500 in his, but it's not going to be great. And then Kaapo Kähkönen is backing him up. There's nothing to indicate that this should be too much of a struggle for Nashville. I think they just got depth. They've got a good first line in San Jose, but after that, it's kind of just tumbleweeds, and I think, when you've got guys like Ryan Johansson, Niederreiter on the second line, and then you've got the Herd line with Tanner Jeannot and Colton Sissons and Yakov Trenin on the third line. Yakov Trenin, as you probably know by now, they did approve the Russian players to go play. That third line against, any of the bottom 6 or even the second line for San Jose, they're going to eat them up. They're going to slow the game down and just spend all the time, forechecking, and it's going to slow them down. And Nashville has shown some fast break capabilities in the preseason. So we're going to see. I'm not worried about it. I'm very excited to watch this thing. The game against SC Bern was incredibly fun to see. I mean, they were doing all these chants for all the players. It was incredible. And looking at O2 Arena in Prague, it's the second largest hockey arena of all of Europe. They built it about 20 years ago, after they had a big kind of revolution in Czech hockey over there. And so they built this thing up, but I mean, it's if you look at pictures, it's incredible looking. They've modified it so it looks better than probably half the NHL arenas. Smaller, but it looks incredible for a 20-year-old building. And it'll be cool. I mean, I know talking to some of the people who are over in the Czech Republic right now, they said the crowds are already going nuts. So It's going to be really cool. And I wanted to kind of end this, kind of tie all this together by asking you guys some trivia. And I know that you guys have said, you're not the experts, but I think this should be a name that you might get. So one of the most prominent Predators was from the Czech Republic. He spent 11 and a half seasons with the Nashville Predators from 2001 up until 2012. Something happened after 2012. Top 5 in club history and in career games, goals, and points. So I mean, I think he's third in points at 481 in the franchise history. But this guy is, kind of a name that's going to be in Predators history forever. Do you know who this player is?
No idea.
He is more famous because of how he left the team and what came in his place.
Oh, was it the Forsberg trade? Was it?
It was. Martin
Erat.
Yeah.
Go, Charlie.
Yeah, very nice. Yep. I think it's really funny about him. I think like my first year covering the Preds, I had maybe written like 3 articles, and this has never happened since, but I had a friend request on Facebook and it was Martin Erat. And I was like, sure, nothing has ever come of it, but I'm just like, I'm not going to make fun of the Forsberg trade on Facebook. So I'm going to be cool about it. So, but yeah, just thought that was interesting. One of the best Czech players that Nashville has had. They don't have any right now. Charlie, circle gets the square. Good job, buddy.
Glad. I did not know that. I did not know he was from the Czech Republic. That's interesting. And we can't make that joke anymore, honestly, because they won a cup before we did. So,
Yeah, I guess
so. They didn't win it with Martin Erat.
No, they did not. No, I wouldn't. No, but yeah,
they won it with our old coach.
Yeah, so, exactly. Yeah, So, yeah, but that's I think that was a nice little bow to tie all this together. But shout out to Martin Erat. You're a top 5 in franchise history. You have to give respect to it. But your service was not in vain, and we appreciate it. And that the man that replaced you is getting paid $8.5 million for the next 7 years. So
I do really love, and I'm excited to see the foreign crowd, because the way people, specifically in Europe, like perceive American sports is always really fascinating to me, because they don't have college sports and they love sports that we don't. Soccer is massive, and they just have different interests. So I love how you see like Switzerland. I mean, Yossi's just a rock star, dude. They just are all about him. And there's no Czech players on the current Predators roster, but I feel like they'll still be out there. They'll still be excited to see what's going on. But I'm just kind of fascinated by that, because the culture around sports here is so different. But I also feel like it's even more wild than ours. Like you see like riots and craziness and stuff. Sports.
Yeah, I mean, especially there, kind of Eastern Europe, like, this area that they're in, it's become a kind of a hotbed for hockey. A lot of these countries have had, small hockey programs for years and had like 1 or 2 players kind of make the league. But then they've had a lot, again, like the Czech Republic did back in the early 2000s. These things are, and so when a guy makes it to the league out of these countries, and it's like the guy, they're going to go nutso for him. I mean, if you look at this hockey arena, it was built to be a hockey arena. They've hosted the world championships. They've hosted tons of stuff. KHL, the Gagarin Cup in the KHL. It's made for hockey. And so they are very excited to have these 2 teams. I mean, I think even if Hurdle wasn't, on the Sharks, I think they'd still be just as excited, because they really take it seriously over there. You're absolutely correct.
I mean, you even think about it, like you say, like they're the guy, like in Swiss sports, who it would be Yossi, Federer? Roger
Federer?
I'd say,
I was getting ready to say, so like I would say active, it's definitely Roman Josi right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's a dude.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would put Josi, even with my biggest Homer glasses on, I'm not going to say that he's bigger than Roger Federer, but
no.
but for active though now, yeah, I mean, is what there's Kevin Fiala, those types of guys, but that's, I mean, Roman Josi was just named like the 10th best player in the NHL by poll. I think it was not on the Athletic, but it was TSN. So that's, it's been a long time since Nashville's had one of those type of guys who's been that good. And it's not there's nobody going out there being like, man, he's kind of overrated. I don't think he's the 10th best. Everybody's kind of like, yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, that's probably right. So like, not 9. Oh, that's fine, I guess. Okay, sure. So.
Well, hopefully that game is an indication of things to come, because the dude obviously already had a superstar season last year.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be hard. Only 6 players in the last 30 years, 6 defensemen have gotten past 90 points, and Roman Josi is one of them. So I mean, it's insane how good of a season he had. He outscored a ton of forwards, high scoring forwards. So
there you go. Bryan, what can the good folks check out from you over at On the Forecheck and the good team over there this week?
So much. There's so much happening in the next week. Even though it's just 2 games, we've got the roster cuts. We've got 20. Get down to the 23. When we recapping today's game somehow. And then doing the same probably for tomorrow. Maybe doing the preview for tomorrow. Then we'll have some. I'll probably have an analysis piece for Monday morning to talk about the 2 games and what we saw. After some of the news and the dust has settled. But yeah, there's going to be a ton of that. We're going to be the Renegades Puck on YouTube, led by Charlie Sonia. You can find them on Twitter at Renegades Puck. We're going to be recording our first show this evening after the game and after almost every game this season. So make sure you catch that. We've got a great crew. Again, Sean Smith over at A to Z Sports is with us. We've got Greg Machopoulos, Kyle Perkins, Charlie, Rachel, a writer over at OTF. It's good. It's a good, fun crew. I really enjoy doing that. And so you guys check that out. It's a great thing to kind of listen to the mornings after game days.
There you go. What about you, Charlie, over at A to Z Sports and the good folks over there?
Well, I will just double plug. Renegades of Puck is my go-to to listen to after games. Nobody better. But Tennessee football in full swing, and somehow they're actually good this year, it looks like. So that's great. Or at least so far through 4 games.
Not just good, they're great.
The hype is horrifying me in a good way, though. So I'm just extremely nervous now, because the LSU game actually means something. It means a lot. And because if you win this game now and you only lose to Alabama before the Georgia game will be for the SEC East, which who knew that would be a thing. So, but otherwise, halftime post game with former Vols quarterback Jonathan Crompton. You'll find me there on the A to Z Sports Network, A2Zsports.com, YouTube on A to Z Sports Nashville. And otherwise, I write stuff on A2Zsports.com. Oh, and the Big Orange podcast every Monday at 4 p.m. live streamed on.
I was wondering.
On the same A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel. You can find it there. We've been blown up doing the best numbers we've ever done. Shout out to Tennessee football for winning, because that's how that happens. So,
it's a lot of fun to listen to your halftime, like your intermission. God, my brain has been broken. Your halftime and post game stuff. It's very entertaining to listen to. So make sure you guys are checking that out.
I appreciate that.
Did you ask Zach how the NL East ended up going?
I did. So at the end of our last show, I am completely agnostic to that whole situation. I'm a Rangers fan. We suck out loud, so I don't really care. I did ask him. He was not too happy about the old Mets. For those that don't know, my co-host of the Big Orange podcast, big Mets fan, literally he went earlier this year up to New York and went to Mets games. I mean, he is all about it. And
poor guy,
they blew it sky high.
Well, at least he got to see them when they were in first place, which was the majority of the season, which is just like winning the division. I
mean, Atlanta went and took it. They down the stretch, man. They just turned on the Jets. I don't know. It annoys me because I'm actually pretty bitter about the Braves. Because everybody, I've always been a Rangers fan,
and that'll do it for this edition of.
I've always been a Rangers fan, and just the Braves. Everybody's a Braves fan. In Knoxville, lived for most.
Ted
of my
Turner,
life.
his influence, it was huge.
Because I've always I wanted a Tennessee team. That's why I'm a Rangers fan. My cousins live in Dallas Fort Worth, and I would go to games with them. I always wanted a Tennessee team, and I was always like, guys. The entire fan base for the Braves is Georgia fans. They're the worst. Don't give them the benefit of being fans with them. But
it's also not true. You go to North Carolina, it's Braves country. Was just
there. They come from all over.
Yeah, it's all over. That's why I actually would push back against a Charlotte or Nashville Major League Baseball team. I'm like, if it's not even the Braves, it's a lot of Cubs here. You just have a lot of Cubs fans here.
It is on the horizon for Nashville, I think, though. They're really
they're working on it. They're working on it hard. We'll see.
I just don't think people are going to care that it's going to take a long time to flip a lot of young kids. And I don't know. I don't think it goes well.
I think it would go exactly like the Titans have gone. So I've always said this. The Titans had nightmare timing because Tennessee football ran the state of Tennessee, still does largely. And then Peyton Manning left and went to Indianapolis the same year that the Titans came to town, and every Tennessee fan became a Colts fan.
Yes.
And so all those fans they could have had, they lost. And so they've been recovering from that ever since. It's literally been the last 5 years that anyone's given a crap about the Titans outside of me and maybe Bryan or some folks in Nashville. But
no, not at all.
So
because you, I didn't have a Tennessee team growing up and foolishly hitched my wagon to a Dallas-based team, and I'm still paying for that mistake to this day. The somehow 3-1, Dallas Cowboys, the first quarterback to win his first 4 starts in franchise history, Cooper Rush.
Yes.
Wow, what a record! But
it's something.
It has been a journey being a long-suffering Titans fan. They got me in 2000 with the Super Bowl, and they've been killing me ever since. But
by the way, speaking of Peyton Manning, real fast, if y'all didn't see Miles Teller on SNL on Saturday,
that was good.
That was incredible. Like, that was an incredible impression. I was like, it sounds more like Peyton than Peyton does. Like, he had everything down. And from somebody who's had the vision of Peyton Manning burned into my eyeball since, I was very young. I'm like, yeah, that's it. He got it. So, sorry.
I have a cousin named Peyton after Peyton Manning. I have a cousin literally named Peyton.
I went to college with like 30 people, and most of them were girls. So
many Peytons.
A lot of Peytons.
In Knoxville, Tennessee. I mean, what do you
think is the most common female name at the University of Tennessee? I
knew a kid named Neelan Peyton. I'm not kidding. I went to school. Not school. I knew him after. I met him after high school.
I don't know. UT, like Ashley, Jennifer, something like that. I don't know. I mean, I have no clue. That's a good. I don't think it's like a. I don't. Nobody really wants to name their kid Pat, and so you gave him Patricia or something as a middle name. Mm-hmm. But it's not the most kid name. It's like calling a.
I've seen a Summit though.
Yes, I have seen that too. Yeah, mm-hmm. But I mean, it's either that or something with like 2 Y's in the name. So Brooklyn with like 3 Y's, or just like Madison with 2 of them. Just ridiculous. That's probably the other thing. I guess I have no clue. But it's a good question. I mean, probably like you said, Peyton would probably be close for boys. Maybe it'd be more of those, but. Yeah, it's a good question. You have to find that out, man. You're the man on the scene.
I know. I'll do some polling. I'll do some man on the street.
Yeah.
Survey going.
Or just like next time I'm in Neil and just yell out a variety of names and see how many people turn their heads. That'd be a good one. Yeah. That'd be good. Like Larry from Impractical Jokers, just that running bit of just yelling Larry. That's what I could do. Yeah. Charlie Burris, Bryan Bastin, thank you as always, my friends, and I will talk to y'all next week. Go Vols. Go.